Hi everybody, David Dilling here from Markzware. Today we have a special guest, Robert Damelio. He's one of our customers from OmniMarks. And before we get into how he uses OmniMarks and his graphic design background, Robert, maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself and how it is down there in lovely Florida.
Well, the weather in Florida, this part of Florida is remarkably consistent. It's hot and humid. As far as myself, I think the short answer to that question is I'm a guy that leads a lot who helps individuals and organizations improve their potential.
Excellent. And I mean, you're an author of a best-selling book called The Basics of Process Mapping. It's out in its second edition. Could you maybe tell us a bit about the book?
Well, so the first, I wish I could say the idea for the first book was mine. Indirectly, I got hired by Citicorp, late 80s, I guess, right after I started my business. They wanted something on process mapping to use inside their organization. Citicorp, as you may be aware of, is a mammoth organization. So they said, we need something on process mapping. We can't find anything. We'd like to pay you a one-time fee to generate something for it. So I thought, wow, that's cool. So they flew me to New York, first time in New York, looked at what their situation was, figured out, relevant examples to their business, wrote them the publication. They got the deal of the century, probably. This was like they paid me a $10,000 one-time fee. And I thought, wow. So if a company like Citicorp is interested in this stuff, other companies might be too. That's what led to the first edition. I modified all the stuff that I did for Citicorp, added a couple more things to it, I had to make up, non-banking examples because
right.
Obviously I'm not gonna tread on a client work product. And then I never published before. Went to a conference. Somebody that I knew at the conference introduced me to a person at the time that was the publisher for the kind of books in the field that I work in. And so I'd never done anything, but I said, hi, this is me. I introduced myself. I got a book you guys may be interested in. And so, boom, that's how that happened.
Wow. Awesome. Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you, Robert. So what exactly is process mapping, actually?
Okay, process mapping, I think the easiest way to understand that is it's a graphical, i.e. visual representation of work. There are a variety of mapping techniques or practices that you could use. My book addresses 3 of those. And something called value stream mapping that's been out and is used quite a bit by people in the lean thinking community. And that is also a visual model of work. So the work is the same in every situation. The practices that they use to create the models of those is what changes. So my book explains, the second edition especially, covers principles, practices, and has a case study showing how that stuff was applied for a large government organization whose name rhymes with Wavy.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. Very interesting. Yeah. Very useful, I could imagine, especially for large multinational, which of course over the years is becoming more and more multinational, international business workflows.
Absolutely. Sometimes people will track me down because they've come across the book and they said, "Are you the guy that wrote so and so?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" They said, "What's wrong with it?" and they said, "Oh, we just think we have." Here's a good example. We have extra money, and it's a use it or lose it situation. Would you come do something for us? Well, yeah, I don't want to lose the money. So.
Yeah. Well, just on that fact, on Amazon itself, it has 143 ratings. Your book, second edition, and 4.5-star rating, which is quite good for Amazon. So well done. You're doing something right.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, David.
Okay. Now we'll dive a little more closer to Markzware. We'll start with the 40,000-foot view of how did you get involved with graphic design. I think I kind of know the answer, but and amass all those QuarkXPress and Adobe Illustrator files that you needed to convert at a certain point.
Yeah, that's in a nutshell. I have about 30 years of work products that I and others in my company help create for the same clients that we mentioned. And one of the skills that I realized that I was not very good at was creating graphics. So I hired a first person that was not in the field that I work in, who turned out to be a brilliant graphic designer. I used her. I was able to make use of her talents in a lot of the work products we did, and the ones that caused me to find you guys were done in Quark and some other applications back in the early '90s. I had none of those. I couldn't even open them.
Yeah, they're probably just white files on your Macintosh there.
Yeah.
That's where we step in. So, okay, so very interesting. So, but how did you find Markzware exactly?
All right, so I mentioned that I couldn't open these files, and I had been working that problem off and on because I had been retired for about 10 years. But off and on, I can't let go of a problem if it's hard for me to let go of a problem that is unsolved. It's wrapped up in who I am and what I do.
Right.
So anyway, I kept coming back to that, and I remember reading an article talking about Adobe InDesign, and that it could open Quark files, and I went, So I did a Google search, put, pretty much that same question into Google search. Does Adobe InDesign open Quark files? Boom, up pops a YouTube video. Your smiling face is there. And another individual was there. And I thought, maybe I'll watch this video. Because normally I am leery of clicking on something that I don't have prior experience with in today's world. I took a chance. Boy, I got that idea. I found two of your applications. It was wonderful. I thought, well, I don't know if I want to spend. I think it was like $200, which is noise. But I didn't. I'm real sensitive to when I started my business again. I'm really watching the funds.
Right.
I learned that lesson the first time. You got to pay attention to that stuff. Anyway, so when I clicked on the video, I watched you and another individual.
Lori Rulin, I think.
Yeah. And she was a user, it turns out, and is a user, it turns out, and does graphic design work, it turns out, because I went to her website after all this stuff, and I went, if she uses it, chances are, it works, and B, it might work with my stuff. So I said, okay, it's worth a try. And you offer a trial version, so I could actually test it out on my files to see if it worked before I made the purchase decision. So I followed the procedure, downloaded it, opened up a file, and I opened up a file that I hadn't been able to open in at least 15 years.
Wow.
And so, I thought, that was easy. So sometimes, every idea has its time. And I thought, well, okay, so timing really is everything. And so, because I had kept coming back at this thing, the time was now right, the conditions were right, your software existed, and boy, what a good fit that turned out to be.
Wow, great to hear. Yeah, just to interject on so the other people watching will understand, we have a freebie version. So what Robert Damelio is a freebie version. That's only for previewing your Quark files. In this case, he tried QXPMarkz for Quark files.
Right.
It doesn't do the conversion for free. That you have to pony up for. But at least you get to see, hey, like Robert just explained, your document opens, like, hey, it's working. And more or less, that's how it will convert. It can be quite different depending on the complexities of the page layout, but at least you get an idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I got more than the idea. I feel like got the keys to the candy store.
Yeah. Oh boy,
Really.
yeah, that's a good. That's
Yeah.
a good analogy. Yeah. So
30-year work, and it's basically in a vault.
yeah,
I got the combination. It's not in the vault. I've got you to thank for that.
yeah. Oh, great to hear. It's like these people have these original bitcoins, that they lost the key to,
yeah. I read about that. Someone had millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of bitcoins, and they threw out the hard drive, and they spent all this time looking at the hard drive. I thought, wow, that's a good analogy. I didn't throw anything out. I just couldn't get to it.
It's going to get in, and a lot of these people as well. They have their Bitcoin on their machine. They just don't know the they call it the seed. They don't know how to get in anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway.
Right.
Okay, so great. So now but how did you ended up purchasing OmniMarks? How did you get on the trail of OmniMarks? Why did you purchase OmniMarks instead of QXPMarkz?
Oh, okay. So honestly, I wasn't sophisticated enough to recognize that perhaps just one of your software applications would be sufficient. I knew I had multiple file formats that I needed to address, like PDFs was a big one. And JPEGs and a bunch of stuff like that.
Illustrator,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah. I now know it was Illustrator that was the graphic software that the graphic designer used.
Yeah. So, because you got OmniMarks, so you could do more than just the Quark files, but the other files that you had, right, which makes sense.
Yeah, I had a comprehensive set of files that saved in a variety of different software formats, and then I saw your description for the what I call the all-in-one version, and I thought, well, geez, the difference in price is negligible. I can get all this stuff. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I mean, it was like I said, I think it was maybe $200 or something.
Yeah, OmniMarks is about double that, but you get double you get quadruple the amount of yeah.
Okay.
But
the annual license price.
Yeah. And what do you like best about OmniMarks?
Oh, it's one click.
Yeah, it's a good explanation. Yeah.
I've been using Apple for almost 4 years. So A, it runs on Apple. B, it runs on Apple. C, you can, because it runs on Apple, you can just, once you open up your application, it says drag files here. I'm really good at that task. I can drag files pretty much any place on the screen. So, and it's not very far to go to get to, your app. So that's why I like it.
Yeah, you just drag it on there and boom, you get the preview and then you can convert. Yeah. Would you recommend OmniMarks?
Oh my gosh, yes. I already sent you a written acknowledgement of how valuable your application software was, particularly in my context. I would recommend it to anyone on any platform at any time with a similar need.
I very recently discovered the YouTube video of you and Lori Rula discussing QXPMarkz. I've been searching off and on for 15 years for something that could allow me to access long ago work products that were primarily Quark and Illustrator files. I am more than delighted to find out that the software does just what I was looking for. I've done a Google search to see if Adobe InDesign can open Quark files. That's how I found out about the wonderful products you offer. If you were a Klingon, they would sing your name in song. I'm happy to leave a review, etc., etc. Geek Squad should know about Markzware. We agree. Apple business folks should as well. We also agree. And lastly, the part about finally, I bought a Creative Cloud license from Adobe as a direct result of your software, OmniMarks. Very interesting. Right. And you had mentioned something interesting, that after you got our software, you actually purchased a subscription to Adobe Creative Cloud.
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that I've never lacked for is confidence in being able to learn new things. I'm a lifelong learner. Now, confidence is one thing. Time and skill to develop expertise is a completely different thing. And so I thought, well, I used to use Quark. How much different could Adobe InDesign be? It's different. It's much newer, has a lot of nifty features. But then I thought, wait a minute, I should be smarter now than I was 30 years ago. And I think I am, at least in terms of what my skill set is and when I should do someone else's skill set. And then I thought, wow, okay, as much fun as this would be to learn, and I did have a little bit of fun, I said, this is not the best use of my time when I need to get a brand new website up and I need to find somebody that, the Lloyd person that you mentioned in your video, I reached out to her. She's probably world-class expert in that field using Adobe Creative products.
Yeah.
So, okay, I think she's better than me at this. She always will be better than me at this. So I reached out to her and said, hey, I might have some work for you a little later on. She said, well, I'm preparing for a big conference right now. Get back to me after that one. She's an instructor, as you know, and coach in a variety of Adobe Creative Cloud products. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, very smart. Very smart. Well, very good, Robert. I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else you want to add before we go here, or?
Yeah. Well, I think one quick thing. I think I mentioned earlier that I read a lot, and
yeah,
there was a statistic I learned. When I was a management development instructor at Texas Instruments, right at 82 maybe. And during one of the courses, James Whitmore Sr. was on a 16 millimeter film, and he said, you know, if you read a book a month in your field, after 4 years, you'll be an expert. And I thought, that can't be true. So I said, that's so easy. So I don't know if you can see the bookshelves behind me.
Yeah.
So a book a month, in other words, what, 48 total books maybe. So that's like 2 shelves of mine. So, and I have more bookcases that you can't see. So every one of those books is in my field. Now, big deal, but what I'd like to share with your readers is, and I want to acknowledge some people that had a major influence on my life through their work. I met most of them in person, except for the first one I'm going to show you. This guy has got this is called Atomic Habits. He sold 7 million copies of this in a ridiculously short time frame. So I said, well, I got to take a look at that. If you pick it up, you'll know why. There's another question that says, what is the one book that you keep coming back to over and over in your field? That book is this called, it's called Improving Performance by Gary Rummer. He since passed away. Alan Brace is still living, as far as I know today, still outside of Irving, Texas. Another person, so that's really for Gary's family that I did that. He had a major influence on my life. In fact, he, I found out in the early 80s that he was using my book in his workshop, which to me was the highest professional compliment that I could have ever heard.
Oh, could imagine. Yeah.
This is the final one I'll show you. This one's called Building Expertise. It's the third edition. This is by Dr. Ruth Clark. Ruth Clark had a major influence on me, my work, my organization, because we started developing custom learning materials for Fortune 500 companies. We used her recommended approach to that, and, you know, that got us off to a great start in the business.
Wow.
So I want to thank those people, and I want to answer one other question that I'm asked. People are going to say, where have you been and what have you been doing for like 12 years? Okay, so I've been taking a deep dive. For me, that's really deep. This is called A Machine That Changed the World. Most people in the lean profession know what this book is and why it's significant, but they may not have read it. Second, this is called the Toyota Production System by Taiichi Ono. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. I think his title is Ono-san. But at any rate, this is a gentleman that is credited with being primary architect of the Toyota production system, which in my view is the most powerful management and learning system that's ever been created on the planet.
Yeah, yeah, and interesting. Ford had his whole system that was very popular, still is, and then
exactly.
Toyota,
And Ono started Ford.
Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh, can you go back to the machine that changed the world? What? I mean, I don't want to be the spoiler, but what machine was that?
Okay, so there was a graduate student. It was part of it's a mouthful. I'm not going to go into mouthful, but there was a program that was run, an academic program that was run by a consortium of people based in Michigan, and they populated with grad students. One of the grad students was named John Krafcik, Krafcik. I'm not sure if I'm spelling that correctly. He is the individual that coined the term lean production. Now, the only reason I know that is because it's in this book, and I say there are so many people in the lean profession that are spreading what they believe to be, useful, accurate information, and you can't blame them for that. But one of the things I always do is I try to go straight to the source. Because when I read, I find out what's the most original work on this, and read that, because usually other people whose work I follow, make footnotes, and nobody looks at the footnotes unless they're me, and then I say, oh, I wonder what else that author's written. So I get everything that I can. When I find a good author on it, that's when I need a deep dive. This book is where the term lean production was coined. John Krafcik was a graduate student. He was one of the people, one of the primary people that went to study Toyota as part of this program that the consortium of folks that Michigan had. And the data that he recorded at his observations, this was performance data of plants that make automobiles by Toyota.
Yeah.
And so this was an example of what I would call benchmarking done right.
Wow.
And
so it's on a machine. It's the lean production methodology.
It's the system. But the catchy title is written by people whose names you can see on here. When you're a professor, which these guys are, you have to publish stuff, which they did, and a lot of times they get a lot of help, which they did from their graduate students doing the research. So all of those things manifest themselves in this book.
Wow. Also, because I was thinking, well, the machine that changed the world will come back to Gutenberg.
There you go. Yeah.
And my favorite book, because we do a lot in the printing, we do a lot of quality assurance with Flight Check, our flagship product, along with those conversion tools. It's a lot of printing stuff,
Yeah.
And The Justification of Johann Gutenberg by Blake Morrison is one of my favorite books, at least in this. I really enjoyed it because I always enjoyed learning about how life was back in the old days, so to speak.
Sure.
That's where it goes in.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes you find out that things haven't changed that much.
well, no, they haven't, because the printing press is now the internet, or at least it shares its.
Exactly. Yeah.
So.
But Gutenberg or anyone in his family, unfortunately, I wasn't able to find them to help me with my file problem. I found you. So
right.
That worked out much better, I think, for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great. Well, Robert, thank you again for the time and for the sharing the books. Very interesting. Getting insights into how you went down the path you did. It's sometimes interesting how people end up where they end up. And it's very interesting. Right. Yeah.
So I mentioned earlier, I forgot to close that loop. What have I been doing the last 10, 12 years? I've been in a deep dive on everything I can get around Toyota. Everything.
Wow.
Anything that's in print. There's a lot of stuff. Some of it's useful. But,
wow. Very
interesting.
interesting.
You know that is to, dig into it, which for me is, I guess you could call it a hobby. I've never thought of it that way. I always thought of it as just preparation to do my job.
That's right. Yeah, that's what's nice about hobbies that help other people. Becomes useful for everybody. And on that note, I'm going to share in the description below a link to the Amazon Robert Damelio's book and Robert's LinkedIn, so you can get in contact with Robert if you have any questions on Toyota or process mapping or what have you.
Yeah, process mapping. Yeah.
Or OmniMarks.
Feel free, anyone that sees this, reach out to me about any of those things, David included. Meaning, if you want to hear a verbal recommendation that's not on the film, I'll give it to you.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you again for the time, Robert, and have a great day.
You too.
All right. Take care. All right. Let me